How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to our last JPD for July. I've got one last Grateful Dead shirt and one last Zinfandel for you. So 2 weeks ago, we discussed motivation and how our motivations are things that push us forward. This week, we're going to talk about perspective and connect it to inspiration, which encompasses things that pull us forward. So perspective is a particular attitude toward or way of regarding something, your point of view. This one definition is personal. It applies to you and the way you see the world based on your upbringing, your position, your experience. Another definition of perspective, like saying that someone has perspective, is to say that they have knowledge, that they view things from many angles and have a more complete picture. In one definition, we're saying that perspective is highly personal, neither good nor bad, but rather a function of situation and experience, a snapshot, per se. The second definition portrays perspective as an attribute that can be gained, earned, built upon over time, growing and changing. Not just experience, but the ability to apply it, wisdom. We'll cover both definitions because you have to account for the snapshot view of your world in order to orient yourself and appreciate other perspectives. One is a starting point, and the other unlocks lenses to add to our mental arsenal. What am I talking about? Some things we've been hitting on the past few months are empathy, humility, self-awareness. If all we have in this world is a desire to fulfill our own needs and wants, we are narcissists, unfit to lead or serve. Empathy, then, allows us to account for others' perspectives. We cannot experience the whole world on our own. We're only given our own soda straw. But an empathetic person can glean from others' experiences because they can feel what others have felt and can add a piece of that experience to their own life. This is why reading, watching, listening is so important. We cannot live more than our own lifetime, but we can add others' experiences through their media. A humble person will appreciate they might not always be right, that others may know more in certain situations, possess a growth mindset, are unafraid to make mistakes, and willing to learn from any situation. Someone with self-awareness knows where they are, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially, occupationally, grammatically, in so many ways. If they know what they can control and what they cannot, it saves them a lot of stress and anxiety. So why are these attributes important? Why is perspective important? Why does it matter to you? We've all heard the cliche that the world does not revolve around you. I'll sort of disagree and say that your world absolutely revolves around you. However, putting that perspective into practice leads to infantile behavior. If you only do for yourself based on whatever your needs and wants are at the time, it's much like a small child. So as we grow, we realize that there are so many factors out there, and while we may not agree with things that happen or the way the world is structured, we grow to appreciate that there are things we can do to take charge of things that we can control. So I say again, why does perspective matter to you? It is because developing greater perspective will help you identify what you can control, appreciate the things you have, understand how to get where you want to go, and ultimately be at peace with the world. As we said a couple weeks ago, you need to have a little bit of both motivation and inspiration to keep moving forward. Focusing on perspective this week, how does that tie to inspiration? This may be a leap in logic, and I may be assuming too much, but I believe a healthy perspective is inherently inspirational. If we define inspiration as the process of being mentally stimulated to do or feel something, especially to do something creative, then yes, a healthy perspective drives inspiration. A healthy perspective compels empathy, meaning we actively seek to feel more acutely the world around us. We are tied into what is happening around us. If we are tied in, mentally and emotionally invested, we embrace the world as it is and are constantly seeking to improve it. Not for our sake, not for others' sake, but maybe just for the sake of doing it, because we thrive off that growth, are enriched and empowered by the positive energy of others. Whatever you want to call it, a healthy perspective on life puts you in a good place any given day and creates a hunger for that feeling to persist and grow. Where do we gain perspective? How do we find inspiration? We could go a little cliche and say, well, things could always be worse. You don't say. Of course they could. Obviously, this is not a substantive way to look at the world, and it is less than inspiring at best and defeatist at worst. So where do we really derive perspective, and when? The when is easy. We do it all day, every day. If we have an empathetic approach to life, to others, we start to accumulate their perspectives because we can see through their eyes. When we constantly look to understand, to feel as others do, we profit from their experience, much the same as reading a book or watching a movie. But in these cases, we know it's real because we hear it directly from those we know personally. The present is supreme. And as the Smashing Pumpkins would say, believe in the resolute urgency of now. The where is everywhere. People and their perspectives are all around us. To tap into them, we simply need to reach out. And here I'm going to quote from an article from Entrepreneur. The key to successful relationships lies solely in our ability to take the perspective of another. Perspective taking is that all-important skill of being able to look at things from a point of view other than our own. Perspective taking brings in the mindfulness of compassion and empathy to our relationships. The people who say every cloud has a silver lining aren't always hopeless optimists who don't know what else to say. Quite often they're right. Maybe that silver lining isn't something that makes up for a tragedy, and maybe it's not something that makes you feel justified in the struggles you've experienced. However, fortunately and frequently, that silver lining is perspective. Perspective reminds us of what's important and what's not. It helps us recognize that we probably don't need to dwell on one bad grade for too long or wallow about a relationship that we knew wouldn't work out in the first place. It allows us to move on, to not sweat the small stuff because the bigger life-altering problems are still looming. It doesn't make the problem that caused it go away. It doesn't fix tragedy or the struggle or regret. What it does is it allows you to live the rest of your life from the moment you truly gain perspective forward with a more level head. It reminds you of what's actually important. It reminds you that you shouldn't spend hours in agonizing worry over things you can't control. Basically, what perspective does is organize issues for you. It allows you to clearly, or at least more clearly, see which problems are big and which are not. In the heat of what can seem like the largest tragedy or the largest curse, perspective can save you, or can at least be something you gain when it seems all else is lost. From our sponsor, my wife asked me what I wanted for Father's Day this year, and I told her I wanted done one of these sweet portraits. I liked mine so much, I have commissioned one for each member of the Chief Pilot Office. These portraits are not practical in any sense. Mine is beyond ridiculous, but damn if I don't look good. So check out the site, royalportraits.com, and get yourself some fancy prints. Now we're into the how. This is where we bring it all together. We've had a lot of innuendo and thoughts dancing around the main point, but when we zero in for clarity, it all comes down to this. The more we understand the world around us, the better equipped we are to deal with what we perceive as adversity. Adversity can even be transformed into growth opportunities. It is possible to reach a state of mind that puts you at peace with all sorts of trials. We need only be open to the idea and put some things aside. I'm not going to talk about those things today because here we're teetering on the edge of some extremely deep philosophical topics that could lead us down a rabbit hole that this video cannot contain. So while I apologize for that teaser, I will say this as a wrap-up. To find perspective, you can do two things. You can live life. You can gain perspective through trial and error and learn for yourself. But as I've stated, this will limit you to what you can cram into one lifetime. Therefore, the second approach, to supplement the first, is to learn from others. Actually listen and process what your experienced mentors have to teach you about the world. You don't have to get all hook, line, and sinker, but accept those data points and be willing to learn. If you have good mentors, good leaders, they will not lead you astray. They will be real with you. Part of being a good leader is helping others avoid landmines that you've stepped on in the past. But that's only half the equation. The other half is having followers who possess the aptitude, wisdom, and humility to accept that guidance and forge a smarter generation, thus promoting growth. And this is where I hit you with the real. If your first assignment is here in the Double Deuce, you lucked out. Truly. Any of the old heads who've been around the block will tell you that there was and is some tough stuff out there. Whether that be manifest in ops tempo, location, the weather, or availability of top shelf red wines, man, we got it good. Not perfect. We all have our things to deal with in the Double Deuce, be it manning issues that we have to work out, high cost of living, fluctuating tempo, and relative instability of taskings, or across the board issues like COVID. It's not all rosy. Like I said, I hate to say it, but things could be much tougher. Does that mean that our challenges are invalid? No. We should and do always strive to do better and be better for our people. However, we need a little perspective in order to take a good faith approach to addressing our issues. By that I mean pure cynicism, complaint about any discomfort is toxic and can destroy an organization. By having some perspective, the idea that things are good, which they are, we can then focus on being great. Not because we hate our situation, but because we love it and only want it to continue, improve, and grow. This central idea brings together so many things we've been discussing over the past few months. It really comes to a head during assignment cycles, promotion cycles, and the like. The threads on expectation management, personal responsibility, sacrifice, leadership, humility, they all come together here. It's a lot to discuss, which is why we have the Thursday session in order to get deep on these topics. But since I have the mic, I'll say this. Where you're at is awesome. Don't believe me? Ask around, especially to people who've accumulated some scars. And they'll tell you. That doesn't mean that your struggles aren't real. But let's get after them. Not because things suck, but because they're awesome, you're awesome, we're awesome, and we have, to quote Winston from Ghostbusters, the tools and the talent to reach stratospheric heights as people and as an organization if we can get behind that idea. All right, wrap up in homework. Thursday we got Unleash the Beast with Ish. Sorry, it's the last one. Couldn't help myself. So there's some homework. For the old peoples, think about how far we've come, how things used to be, and what we have now, and how we made those changes. Young people, reflect on what you heard. What wisdom do you bring? What things do you see that we can improve on? And all peoples, think about how we apply the lessons learned to forge a better future. If you like the video, smash that like button. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you know the moment we drop new content. Thanks so much for listening. I appreciate you. We will see you Thursday. See ya.